We didn't lay down and die and go away. We survived, or survival people. And interestingly enough, the strongest ones of our people, this was before your liberation movements or anything else, were the women. The Native women, the early California women, were really strong women. I think back, women complain now. I think of the majority of those Native women that I grew up with and around. Most of them had jobs. Most of them had very large families. Most of them were the backbone and structure of the home. Most of them made the decisions. Most of them were the reason the home and the family unit stayed together, because the men were always off working, trying to support their family. And they weren't rich people. We weren't rich people. San Juan's a very poor community, surrounded by farms and ranches, but it was a very poor community. But the women kept those. I have to give credit to where credit's due. The women were definitely the backbone of San Juan Capistrano. Those early women were very, very strong. I don't know where they got their strength. They would lose their children. They would lose family members, and they'd go on with life. They would continue on. Remarkable women. So I have to give a little plug to those women, those Native American women and early California women. Apolonia Montano. Talk about a remarkable woman. She's a whole story in herself. Here's a woman if she was living today, she would be giving this country, this government, this community a run for its money. I know she would. She was born around 1835. She died in 1917. She was born around 1835 at Mission San Luis Rey. They claim she was Juaneño. She was probably Acjachemen, which incorporated the Luiseño people at that time. I think she's Luiseño. She was born at Mission San Luis Rey. Around 1835, she came and had contact with that adobe through her grandfather, Tomas Gutierrez, who was a master carpenter for the missions. And he must have been outstanding because they granted him this adobe. They had built 40 in San Juan Capistrano as housing for people that were going to be brought into the working force, the mission system to work. Tomas Gutierrez, her grandfather, got one of these homes. Long story short, she was able, no one's quite sure how she managed to do it. I think it's her name. She was able to get deed for that property. No one knows how. This was at a time when women couldn't have deeds to land. Only the male could. But she got deed to the land. She was also the one who kept the mission going when there was no priest there. She would give the church a run for their money nowadays. I know she would. She did everything in San Juan that a priest would normally do, with the exception of celebrating the Mass. She baptized, anointed the sick, saw to the dying, buried the dead, made sure people were prepared for the sacraments when a priest did come up from Mission San Luis Rey, taught the catechism. She was also a midwife, so a lot of the children in the community were born at her hands. But something even more, in a time when there was no specialized medicine, Apolonia was treating women in her adobe with female-related illnesses. She was treating them that adobe with illnesses. Apolonia had grown, she grew all her own herbs and treated the women with those herbs. And she was successful at it. There was no doctor here. She was the doctor. So she was also, the thing that surprised a lot of people, she was Capitan of the community. Again, something unheard of for a woman to take on that role. Because that meant, back then, Capitan, she was the arbitrator, the mediator, the mayor, the governor. What she said went. People would come to her. So she was very much in control of the community. She was also the one that when the priest did finally come to the mission, even if it was for a short term, she would take the priest through and say, this was here, this was there, this is Sarah Chapel, here's where this is at, here's where that's at, and give him an update. I think the interesting thing about Apolonia too is when you go through the baptismal records during her adult life at the mission, when there was no priest there and you knew that she was performing the baptisms, the priest was very clever when they came up from San Luis Rey. They protected themselves, let's put it that way. So the entries are in Spanish, but they show themselves as the priest and minister of the sacrament, and they show her as a padrina, a nina, a godmother. So they've sort of switched the roles around there, I think, to protect them, but not doing her any justice, but them forgetting there's a whole oral history on her that we have. So there's a remarkable woman.